You know, one of the most compelling parts of the world is Southeast Asia and India, but many Americans know very little about it. And within the LGBT community, it is its own subculture. Our guest today is going to talk to us about that culture and the work she does in its behalf. Welcome, Dipti Gosh.
Thanks.
Now, you were born in India. You said you were an Air Force brat?
I was. I was an Air Force brat, born in India, spent the first 17 years of my life there. And actually, one of the things that made me actually lobby my family to bring me over to the States was I felt like I was different. I was a tomboy. I got teased a lot. Mm-hmm. I knew that there was something different about me. I didn't know what it was. So it
Did
took
you
a few
have
years.
brothers and sisters?
I did. And, you know, I had the standard boarding school experience of having a girlfriend in boarding school at 13 and sort of realizing that there was this, you know, but also knowing that it was wrong because I got teased a lot about it. So it sort of went back into the closet for me, completely into the recesses of my mind.
Right. And what was your family's background? Were they religious? Were they...
Not at all. Actually, I very...
So it was very secular growth.
Extremely secular. I would call my parents liberal left, even in the U.S. So my parents were very progressive. In fact,
would that have been common at that time in India?
Not as common, but probably there were, you know, we had friends, so there were other people who thought like us.
Yeah.
So, but it was probably not the common thing.
Right.
I think most of my friends come from much more sort of conservative backgrounds, more religious backgrounds. And I think that's also what compelled me to become more of a community activist, because I felt like I had a voice, but I also felt like I had a lot less to lose, because I had a family that loved me and supported me even through my coming out. In fact, my mother, you know, did all my coming out for me. I came out to my mother and...
You mean she put out a press release or?
Something like that, but more like, you know, just anybody who said, how was I doing? She would say, well, you know, she's a lesbian. So, and, you know, and she...
That could have been wonderful and also good.
It could have,
challenging.
but, you know, I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I felt like one of the things for me, you know, maybe not as consciously, but I did know that I had a lot less to lose.
Right.
And I felt like I could be out there in front and talk to people, be a voice for people who couldn't be a voice, and also be a support for people who couldn't be a voice. And so that's really how my community activism in the queer South Asian community started.
Right. How big is what, as you refer to it, the queer South Asian community here in the Bay Area?
Right, you know, we have, we're sort of very open organization, so we don't keep track of members, and you know, we just do big events, and we invite people to it, and a lot of people show up. But I think that for us, I don't think we're any different than the 10%.
All right.
So I think that we still, and I think that in San Francisco, I think we're a pretty decent sized organization.
Well, I guess it didn't so much mean the physical size, but the name of your group is called TRIKONE.
Right.
And what is the significance of that name?
The name actually just means triangle. And I think 35 years ago when we were trying to put this organization together, and I actually wasn't part of the founding group, they thought, you know, the triangle would be something that people could symbolize with. And so that's how they chose
the
triangle.
The pink triangle from the time of the Nazi Holocaust against
and I think that
gays
people
and
were
lesbians.
using it. So.
Right. You know, I have a lot of friends from China, Japan, Korea, quote unquote, the Asian community, Pacific Islander community. But within that community, not as many people from...
the South Asian community.
Yes.
Yeah.
How is that different or unique?
I think language-wise we're very different, but I think that there is more of that happening across lines. Like there's organizations like GAPA, and
Asian and Pacific Islanders,
and then there's the API CUTE, which I think you've also spoken with, and we are sort of pan-Asian. And we do work together on a lot of different things.
Right. And
so I think that we are seen in all those different organizations, and we're part of them. And I, for one, have always felt like strength in numbers. So, and I've always been somebody who believed in coalition building, not only within the queer community, but across, you know, social and political issues.
Right.
And so I think, for me, I've always been somebody who's not part of just that one community.
No, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is because I've spent a good deal of time with colleagues in business in China, I've heard many friends talk about the quote-unquote coming out experience as Chinese or Vietnamese or, you know, what is more quote-unquote traditionally Asian. And being difficult because you just don't talk about things
Right.
like that. Is it the same for Asian culture out of India? i.e.,
Absolutely.
is it more difficult to come out as a Chinese lesbian than it is as an Indian lesbian?
I don't think so. I actually think for the majority of people it's just as difficult. I think
But it's not religious based.
it's both. I think it's both religious and culturally based. I think it just depends on the family, but I think if they're not religious, they'll use the culture. And if they're not cultural, they'll use the religion.
So now you said that you didn't really know until you knew when you were in boarding school, but you came out at age 26 after you
Yeah.
moved to the United States.
In college.
When
yeah.
you were a teenager in India, what was it like for a teenager to be gay in India? What was the status of the law? What was the status of the culture versus what it is now?
Well, unfortunately, the status of the law is the same. The penal code still exists. It sort of rescinded for a bit, and it's come back, and we're fighting it right now. A lot of people in India are fighting it, and we're trying to support that. And then there's, for me personally, oops, I forgot the question.
No,
that's
for instance,
the 61.
Well, that's it. Short-term what? What is the difference between what it was like being openly LGBT when you were a teenager versus now? And the short answer is it's still against the law to be openly gay in India, the world's largest democracy.
Right. Yes. So I think that it's still against the law, and I think it's just as difficult for a teenager there, probably even more difficult. But I think on the same spectrum, little easier than it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So I think families are getting more educated about it. So I think that people are still, there are people who are having an easier time, but I don't think that for them, India is a country of 1 billion people. So there's a lot of people who are not sort of educated on the situation and would probably give we're still getting a lot of violence in India, in terms of on the streets, in parks, the law is not on your side. So, but for me personally, as a teenager, just because it was, that identity was not that openly used. I think back now, and my principal in school was a lesbian. She had a girlfriend who used to come pick her up on a motor scooter.
Was she Indian?
Yeah, yeah, and her girlfriend was Chinese Indian. But these are all in retrospect. But when we were, growing up, we just thought they were friends.
So when was the last time you were actually in India?
2007.
And what is it like being there now as an open lesbian?
Yeah, I think for me, I am who I am wherever I am. I've not done any political work in India, so I just don't know how that would affect me. But I think in terms of being who I am and walking the streets, or I just definitely wouldn't kiss a girl on the lips on the street. But I would do it in San Francisco.
Right.
I wouldn't do it there.
Right.
And I think that you're a little bit more conscious of what everybody's thinking.
Do you think that there's going to be a change anytime soon in India politically?
I think what's happened, what I see happening is, change takes a long time. But, we have gay pride marches in India now. And there are people demonstrating on the street. When I grew up, there was none of that. So I think that, we're moving. It's baby steps, but they're still moving in the right direction, and people are fighting. So I think that way, things will eventually change, as they do everywhere. I didn't think in my lifetime we'd have marriage equality.
Right.
But then again, I didn't think we would have, we wouldn't have apartheid.
Right.
So these are the things we fought for, and when you're in the fight, you don't think that it's, that this will ever change that much, but you've got to fight it. But I think eventually things do change. Yeah. So I'm an optimist. So hoping they change for the better.
Yeah. We've only got just about 20 seconds left. Any advice for some young South Asian lesbian out there who's looking at this and going, where do I go if I want to find community?
You know what? That's what we're all about, and we've been that way for a long time. Is TRIKONE, trikone.org will give you all the information that you would need to get in touch with us. And there are people you can talk to. There's a lot of peers who you can talk to, get invited to some of the social events, get to know people. And if you talk to most South Asians and take a survey, chances are most of them got their connection to the community through TRIKONE.
Great. Thank you so much, Dipti.
Well, thank you, David.
Thank you. We've been learning about TRIKONE from Dipti Gosh. We appreciate you watching 10% every week and learning and meeting our community. Thanks for watching. See you next week. This is David Perry.